Okay, thank you for giving us the opportunity to speak and share the operator perspective. Technically, I'm not an operator, but I do work a lot with operators. So my name is Kristian Toivo. I'm the Executive Director of Telekom Infra Project, or TIP, which works a lot with i14y and the broader industry to drive certification forward for Open RAN. Lots of good things have been said in terms of defining. Holger did a great definition of certification, so I'm not going to repeat that. So I'd rather use the time to introduce the panelists, starting from next here. On my right, Aysenur Senyer from Telefónica, straight from Munich. If I got it right, you are responsible for the Director of Transport at Telefónica, with radio also added to it, if I recall it right.
I came here last year as a Director of Transport, but this year I come as an Access and Transport.
Yeah, that's what I remember.
Yes.
So great to have you here, Aysenur. Next is Kaim Munshi from the UK, working at Vodafone as a senior Open RAN engineer. He has a lot to talk about the work being done in Open RAN with Vodafone Group. And last but not least, a friend from already a long time ago working together, Petr Ledl from Deutsche Telekom, responsible for research and trials and in T-Mobile International or Deutsche Telekom International. I think we have a really good panel of speakers who can share the operator perspective, the importance of certification, and how certification along the lines that the previous panelists talked about, how can that make things more efficient for the operators and actually help in scaling up Open RAN as a technology, as a way of doing things in radio networks, as we have talked about this morning. So without further ado, I will start with actual Petr to give a bit of a more context into, from an operator's perspective, what does certification actually mean?
Sure. Thanks a lot, Kristian, and of course, happy to be here, and thank you for having me. Maybe also I would look a little bit back, but not that back, as it was discussed with Stefan last time. 2010, you mentioned where it started. So I became part of this initiative around Open RAN and disaggregation in 2016, when we started the XRAN initiative, also together with AT&Ts and other folks. And then later on, it emerged to ORAN Alliance. But why I mentioned that is because one of the design criteria for all the architectural work there was to really introduce flexibility. And flexibility allowing us to exchange components or parts of the RAN system, and of course doing so with envisioning that many more players can play a role. And then of course it was debated a lot that it creates a lot of complexity, integration challenges, and that's where I believe that certification is not only relevant, but it is really also important, because it gives certain level of assurance. So assurance in terms of that component that I want to integrate and deploy is first of all implemented according to specifications. It is also giving certain level of assurance that it is interoperable with the pair of the equipment, so it interoperates. It gives also assurance that it meets certain performance criteria, so there we go to more a blueprint kind of certification. Or also it is supporting use cases that are important for operators. We can mention that open front haul interface is really a good mature interface specification, that in the latest versions you can see the energy efficiency use cases, and these are also complex tasks, and having a certain level of assurance by certification that these aspects are implemented in correct way, it is giving that assurance. And of course, for us being engineers, seeing is believing. So how do we make sure that what I am getting is performant according to what it is saying? So certification is one means of achieving that and getting flexibility. And in order to do that also, it was important, and this is a discussion that is happening around certification, is how do we make sure that if we do tests in one lab, it produces results that are understandable for the people in the other lab. So how do we make the results recorded and reported in a proper way? I find all the necessary parameters that were used. So this is also important for the certification to make it fly, so that we make results that were produced in one lab really consumable in the other lab, and I do not need to repeat it because I didn't see it, but I have enough evidence from the quality of the results that were produced. So
thank you, Petr. That was really good, and it referred back to some of the topics that were brought up by the earlier speakers as well, so it's really consistent. If I move to Aysenur, and getting to know you last night, I know you are very passionate about innovation and also engaging with vendors, both existing ones and new ones. So assuming we have a certification process along the lines that was described by the previous panel, as well as how Petr defined it, how can that help, from your perspective, the engagement with the vendor community and also make more informed and straightforward decisions in your procurement process?
Yeah. I'm also thinking about this, as you said in the previous panel, how to put the certification in the operator landscape, right? So, and in the morning we discuss about, what are operators doing for vendors? I see we have a diverse team here, people here having, small vendors, big vendors, the integrators. So I think from the operator's perspective, we are involved in this testing since years. So although we maybe didn't do the investments in the right expected way, I think there's a lot of contribution to the society with all of the testing we've done. I personally been involved back in 2014-15 in some live testing for the Open Run. And also, I see this from, again, philosophical perspective, and also from the futuristic perspective, right? So some people dreamed about this openness, they put something onto the table, the other guys took it, and then we're doing the realistic testing as the operators. So what I see is that, we have big labs, we want to test it for ourselves. Yeah, of course, I would say certification will help and needs to help, but the problem is how we make it real in our lives. So how can we contribute and make sure that we can work together as the operators and the community, that we ensure that there is a solid outcome here and reflected in our RFQs. I think we discussed the same thing last year. How can we make it real so that next year when we come here, we talk about some real case examples, how we do it. So what I see is that I think what happened in the industry is that we made it possible to have disaggregation on the hardware and software. So we have environments now in the core, running on virtual, now in the cloud, and Telefónica is one of the pioneers as well, putting things on the cloud, starting with core. We have disaggregation on the transport, where we see that we need to change the way we work as operators. Testing against standard interfaces are now more into our life. So coming from that experiences from real life, I think we can agree, and we need to agree, what we can test here against the standard interfaces, then accept that it's in our lives, that we don't need to retest it in our big lab environment. So maybe a distributed lab community can help, because we will have our labs in environments, but it can be a kind of a common agreement on trust basis that we agree to test against some of those in these labs, that we promise that we will use it, right? So in short, I think we really need to come out with some real cases to make it real for next year, right? So that will be my commitment. Try to find out some real cases that I mean, there are already some, like with the previous testing here, but how do we get those to make it more real, and how can we add more on top? So.
Thank you. I think we already have the agenda for next year's panel. Katja, please make note. So, talking about real, going back to our friends in Vodafone and Vodafone in the UK particularly, and the labs that you are working with, Kaim, and the project that you are working with. Now, obviously, Vodafone has been and is one of the real pioneers in taking Open RAN from idea to deployment, closely followed by some other people. But could you share a bit of your experiences so far of what the actual integration, testing, and creating readiness for real deployment has involved, and maybe then reflect on if and when we would have a jointly agreed certification process along the lines that Petr and Aysenur now talked about. How could you foresee that helping you going forward?
Sure. Thank you for having me. Like you mentioned, Vodafone has been involved in Open RAN for many years now. We have several sites in production, and apart from that, additionally, we have, over the years, collaborated with several vendors on different POCs, product integrations, testing, plugfests, and so on. And I think the key insight is that there are challenges, of course. Obviously, ORAN provides its own benefits in terms of flexibility, for example, in choosing the most efficient set of vendors. But at the same time, we understand there are several challenges as well at this moment, which is understandable. Open RAN is still evolving, we believe. So one of the challenges that I want to highlight is the product integration challenges. We highlighted this in the white paper as well that we published with Docomo last year. So for example, an ORU-ODU integration sometimes can take more than 6 months, depending on how much work has been already put into it. And this situation definitely is not ideal for us or any operator. All this time, all these resources can be better utilized in efficient release management and actually deploying the ORAN sites. So I think the solution for this would be certification and badging. What this would do is it will allow vendors to identify solutions and products that are ready to be deployed without having to go through all these integration challenges, the hassles in testing, etc. And I think that would save a lot of time for the operators, and that would lead a way for operators to just get the products in, not test them rigorously, and then deploy them. I talked about the benefits of the operators, but I think there are benefits for the vendors as well. Vendors, I think, can showcase how good their products are, how well the products is performing, and in some cases also showcase how much they have developed over the years. And if I have to be specific, I think specifically for new vendors, I think it's a great opportunity. These new vendors might have been overlooked by the operators in the past, but having this certification, I think they can go with the confidence and knock on the operator's door and say, hey, we have a certified product or solution that you might be interested. So I think it's a brilliant opportunity for the new vendors. Having said all this, I think we still need a facilitator for all this certification and badging. We talk about it a lot. And I think i14y can be a great platform for the vendors to test this product, get certified. And also, if we go a step further in a multi-vendor environment, or the new vendors, they can, get the resources from i14y lab, work on the issues that they might have, iron out all those issues, for example, with product integration. And once they have that, they can test it, get certified, and all under one roof. And I think that is amazing. I think i14y lab can, help, or labs like i14y can help operators achieve this dream of test once and deploy many, like Peter said as well, in which once something has been tested once can be deployed by an operator in different markets or by different operators across the globe. And I think that would save a lot of time and a lot of resources. So in a nutshell, I think obviously there are challenges, and certification and badging can be a solution to that. And the labs like i14y lab can, help us get there.
Thank you, Kaim. That was a very good and complete summary of, why this should be pushed and taken forward, which I'm convinced, based on what we've heard so far today, is going to happen. I wanted to use some of the remaining time still to dive a bit deeper, starting with Petr. You talked a lot about the open front haul integration, which in my language is like the horizontal integration, but we also have a vertical layer with the, I think we heard in the previous conversations earlier today about the challenges to move to truly virtualized, open, disaggregated stacks, if you like. Maybe that word wasn't used in that same way, but that's how I read some of the reflections, moving to real open hardware, software, integration of these different vertical components. How do you see, from your experience now working in this whole O-RAN ecosystem, where are we beyond the obvious integration of front haul? What more needs to be done so that we actually can achieve a properly certified, deployable system? Are we on track? What's missing? What could be done? And what should be done more, Petr?
Right. So, of course, when people talk about O-RAN and architecture, it has many different components, and some were picked up earlier, some will be picked up later. We mentioned open front haul, and we are all excited to see that Europe first certificate related to open front haul interface has been achieved here in i14y lab. So congrats to the team again, fantastic job, and also in the end-to-end context. But looking at to your direction, of course, the other element is how do we manage the infrastructure? So there are other interfaces like O1, O2 interface that we need for managing cloud infrastructure and also enable hardware-software decoupling. So this would be the natural choices in addition that were not mentioned, but probably will be discussed later on. This relates to RAPs as well, because we really want to move, and this is a big opportunity from Open RAN standpoint, is introducing RAPs in a way that you moved from competing in a really tight vertical integration and getting one solution to more algorithm competition that people can quickly bring their own ideas via RAP, and they do not need to care so much about the integration complexity underneath. So there are also certain harmonization and certification effort related to interfaces needed to make that happen. Would be next important thing.
Thank you. So there's clearly work still left to be done. I think that's really what was the conclusion. So we are probably going to see more than one more summit. I think we need a couple of summits to finalize all those topics, which is great. Will keep us all busy. Kaim, looking back on what you have done in your work in Vodafone so far, and Aysenur also mentioned the need to cooperate. What's your take on, is it realistic to achieve, for example, and define common criteria that really apply across, let's say, the early players to help drive this certification and also enable the vendors to kind of meet one set of criteria rather than multiple criteria? Any thoughts on that?
I think it's possible. I don't know to what extent, but definitely there are at least initiatives. For example, I think Holger also mentioned about the TIP Global Certification Program, which basically is taking feedback from different operators and trying to understand what their requirements are, so that it provides a meaning to that certification. If a vendor is going to get certified for that product, it at least has that confidence that these many operators would be interested in that. So I think definitely there is work to do, but at the same time, I think to some extent it is possible to have a certification program that would cater the needs of different operators.
Okay, thank you. And and that's kind of important. So from your point of view, Aysenur, how Telefónica's and your personal angle, How hard is it?
Yeah, I think it's very complex environment, and this is why maybe we need to simplify and identify. It's a complex architecture, it's a lot of components to be tested. So how can we simplify? How can we identify the components that needs to be done here in some common environments, right? So I think it's the key to align here. What can be tested together, independent of the operator space in common. So, and we really need to commit on that. And I think, coming back to this philosophical thing, why we're doing all this thing, there needs to be a purpose, and there needs to be a common good for all the environment, no? For the bigger purpose, which is flexibility, innovations for the customers, lots of things coming with this disaggregation thing. So I think, yeah, we need to really be aligning on what we want to do with it, yeah, rather than having diverse ideas on this topic, yeah.
So we need to come together, which is a good conclusion. For the final minutes, I know we are a little bit over time, but we started later, so we'll use our minutes. It's not by chance the three operators are represented here, because Telefónica, Vodafone and DT have just recently signed an MOU backing up the continued work at i14y, which is a great achievement, and it's really important because at the end of the day, the commitment of the operators, as was said by previous speakers, is essential to drive things forward. And I do believe there is also work ongoing to define the next project that could be, in a way, helping us to define some of those common criteria and common components, if I'm using that word, that could be tested together and then help, reduce maybe some of the load that operators do by themselves. Starting with you, Aysenur, what's your expectation on that, and what's happening next?
Yeah, we're working on it. We'll work on it, and I think we have some opportunities as well to identify, and I think we need to time box these activities to be quick and fast on what we want to do, no? And I believe we have some opportunities on it. So let's see the results. I think we need to see the results in the upcoming months. So we're committed to work together with our partners here.
Fantastic. Petr, any final comment from your end?
No, only to add, really, it's a great example to see that under the umbrella of i14y Lab, we have three major operators in Europe cooperating. We have regional commonalities, so why would not we really define together what is important for us, what are the key test scenarios, test cases we want to see, and execute them together so that we can effectively reuse. And this is great proposition that we have here as i14y Lab, and I believe that with that we achieve the goal we need.
Thank you, Petr. Kaim, from your end, what do you expect from that common work in the next phase?
Yeah, I think most of the things, both of these covered. But if there's anything, it's quite amazing that the three operators from the European region are together, and I think with this powerhouse, we should be able to provide a lot of feedback. And like Aysenur mentioned, that we need to speed up things, and we need to make sure that we can trust each other, share that information, be more transparent, and make sure that we, get to the finish line as soon as possible without any more hiccups or, stopping in between. I think we should be dedicated towards this, and at the end of the day, whatever we discussed so far, I think it's going to be beneficial at the end.
Thank you. Fantastic. So speed is of essence, and I think we will have a lot to talk about next year in the conference, and hopefully even in between. So with all that said, thank you to the panelists. Thank you for sharing your experiences and also the commitment to work together, which I think is essential. Thank you.